You're listening to the podcast When Life Gives You Lemons, presented by me, Emma Levy. Having worked with elite athletes for most of my career, it's always intrigued me that a significant number of high-performing individuals have encountered some form of adversity earlier in their lifetime. My fascination into this grew when I had my own brush with adversity, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer in May 2020, in the midst of the global pandemic at the age of 36. During this period, I questioned whether it was my positive mindset or maybe something deeper, which enabled me to bounce back and to train and compete for a triathlon just 1 month following completion of all active cancer treatment. The goal of this podcast is to explore this concept further by meeting a variety of high-performing individuals who have experienced adversity, but who have come back stronger. Today, I'm welcoming Catherine Capon to the podcast. Catherine is a British naturalist and environmentalist who is passionate about responsible ecotourism. Through her work as a documentary filmmaker, an environmental campaigner, she aims to inspire people to live more consciously on our planet. Catherine believes we should travel the world consciously and promote ecotourism to re-engage with the natural world. Following the birth of her 2 children, Catherine has been through some postnatal struggles, but she's managed to come through that, find herself again, and launch Wild Up, Slow Down, which is a community for other wild mums. So firstly, Kat, where can I sign up?
Well, that's a good question, Emma. We're not quite there yet. But thank you for having me. Yes, I will definitely introduce the Wellness Hub as we go through, because that's definitely been the upside of the slight sort of struggles that I've had for 5 years.
Yeah, and I'm sure we will get there, but let's kind of jump back to the beginning then. And can you tell us how you became an eco-warrior?
Yeah, absolutely. I can give you a little whistle-stop tour through maybe my life up to this point. So as a kid, was just fascinated with wildlife documentaries. David Attenborough was literally my god. And when I grew up, I just wanted to help excite and inspire other people about the wonders of the natural world, just like Sir David had done for me. I was really lucky. I followed this passion and I got to study zoology at Imperial College, which, you know, is no small thing. It's an incredibly difficult university to get into. I think it's one of the 7th best university in the world. But I was so dedicated to following this passion of mine that I, you know, really did put in the work and effort for it. And I grew up in London, probably, you know, as far as you can possibly get from a natural environment. It's like the human zoo. But whilst I was at uni, I got the opportunity to study bats for 3 months in Honduras. So it was the first time that I was able to get out of the lecture theatre and to finally kind of see, smell and hear all of this incredible wildlife that I had been learning about up to that point. And, you know, everyone told me I was crazy. People told me there's absolutely no chance you're going to last for 3 months. You'd be lucky to last a week. I was having to, you know, bathe in a kind of dirty river, not dirty, but, you know, a non-sanitized river, sleeping in a hammock every night, cooking on a fire, setting up my own camp, miles and miles from kind of civilization, if you like, living off rice and beans. And it was a really big thing for me, actually, because as a youngster, I never really traveled to kind of wild or exotic places with my parents. And it really was the first time I'd gone anywhere outside of my comfort zone. First night, I have to say, did not go to plan. We did like a 10-hour hike from base camp up to where we were studying the bats, and, you know, absolutely shattered, massive backpack on my back, exhausted. Got there, set up the camp. I had to undergo some sort of serious jungle survival training before I went, to enable me to survive if I lost anyone, or if I, you know, I was able to survive on my own in case I lost the rest of the scientists. And I did everything that they told me to do. I set up my hammock. I turned my boots upside down so that when I put my walking boots on in the morning, there was going to be no critters in there that was going to, you know, give me a fright first thing. And I lay there trying to get to sleep that very first night in the forest, but I just couldn't. It was such an alien environment to me. And I, you know, was wishing my body to kind of fall asleep. And I think at 3 o'clock in the morning, my body gave in. I finally relaxed. And at that point, I rolled over out of my hammock. I ripped my mosquito net, landed on the, you know, wet forest floor, absolutely
Brilliant.
drenched. crying my eyes out at that point, ready to say to the resident scientist, like, get me home. I don't want to be here. Get me back to London and my bed and all my, normal life. But in the morning, my face was, ravaged by mosquito bites. My eyes were like, Quasimodo, all puffy because I'd been crying all night. And I gave myself a really good talking to that point. I was like, I'm not going to prove everyone wrong. I'm not going to be that, soft London girl that wasn't able to survive in the rainforest. And actually, day by day, I got used to it. I loved it. I was waking up to the sound of howler monkeys. I didn't have an alarm clock there. Howler monkeys were echoing through the forest, which is just the most magical sound. Watching wildlife, watching hummingbirds, beautiful hummingbirds that to me are just some of the most beautiful creatures that we have on the planet, the size of insects, and then insects the size of birds flying around. And I made a commitment. I lasted the whole 3 months. And I made a commitment to myself when I left that forest that it had been such a grounding, life-changing experience for me that I was going to dedicate the rest of my days on this planet to saving rainforests like that, places like that, wild creatures. And that was my calling, that was my purpose.
Wow. So you came home with new life goals, and did you set yourself was it like an ambition? Were you like, right, I'm going to work in documentaries, or like how did that come along? How did you get to go and explore the world with documentary filmmaking?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously because of Sir David, my heart was set on the BBC. And actually, I think the day after my final exams at uni, I was lucky enough. I got a place at the BBC as a junior researcher, working in the science and history unit. Anyone that knows what it's like to work in broadcast, very short contracts, very low pay as a starter. And I was fortunate and unfortunate that I had a mortgage to pay at a very young age. I did work in a few different production companies, but actually I had to do a little sidestep for financial reasons into more sustainability and environmental campaigning. So I worked at that point at Saatchi and Saatchi Sustainability. So I've done some awesome things in 10 years, actually. I sort of sometimes have to remind myself of the good and amazing projects. So helping save the Marsican bears of Italy. There's 55 bears left in Italy. They're the rarest subspecies of bear in the world. And they live in such a small pocket of land now. The human, settlements have just encroached. They have this like tiny pocket of land. And
where in Italy are they?
It's in Abruzzo National Park, which is, I guess, 2 hours from Rome. It's actually quite accessible if you're in Italy. And again, not many people know there are bears in Italy. Sometimes you say, Italian bears, and people are like, really? I didn't know, there were bears in Italy, but because there's such a small number now. And the charity that I'm a trustee of, the European Nature Trust, we have done lots of fundraising and working with corporates to raise money to buy a piece of land which connects their pocket of land to this mountainous region, and creating a little corridor of land to try and expand their region. And, being involved in helping save the rarest subspecies of bear in the world is just one of the things that I look back on my career and I'm really chuffed to have been a part of. And there's others getting robots into underwater robots into Bermuda to take baseline data in order to get protection levels for the coral reefs around Bermuda that not only are so important for wildlife, but also actually for the people that live there, because these coral reefs are natural barriers. If a hurricane comes in and there's any chance of flooding or tsunami, these coral reefs are hugely important to protect the real estate, the people, and of course for the wildlife. So another project I was involved with was getting the baseline data around Bermuda. So 10 years of working on some incredible projects, working on Hugh Fairley-Whitting Stall's show about food waste, the fact we waste so much food in urban areas, and we can actually harness that food waste for good, whether that's for animal feed, whether that's for creating actually beers. They now create beer from discarded bread from restaurants and households and things like that. All of these projects and linked so nicely to kind of that commitment that I had made to myself, and it all started from that trip to Honduras.
And you're quite passionate, aren't you, about ecotourism? And I am a massive fan of traveling as well, and it's brought me so much in my life. But I wanted to ask you, as an eco warrior, how you feel about the impact that air travel has on global warming and the consequences of us flying these days and our carbon footprint, etc. And kind of what do you say to those environmentalists out there that kind of ask us not to fly?
Yeah, no, I completely get it. And it's a struggle, an ethical struggle that I have myself. I guess my argument for continuing to travel is that I genuinely believe that human beings are, we are just creatures that we want to learn more. We're interested in other cultures, in other people. And I think that becoming a global citizen, we become better advocates for learning about other people, other cultures, other ecosystems. If we can um, become part of, for even a short time, another people's cultures and ways of life, we become a lot more understanding, a lot more tolerant. People do live in different ways all across the world, but I think only by having experienced it can you really get that understanding and become an advocate and a global citizen. So I think that I can't believe it will ever stop people from traveling. You know, we're such a um, curious species when it comes to traveling the world. I do try, where possible, to travel in the most environmentally friendly way possible. So when I am able to travel over land, by train, I do. But of course, with most people's time allocation away from their kind of 9 to 5, and also budget wise, it can be a bit more restrictive sometimes, being able to take huge amounts of time to travel long distances by land versus by aeroplane. I sort of think that for me, the pros of becoming an ambassador for these places, for learning about them, for getting people to understand as local people that these animals are worth more alive than dead. Tourists coming in from different countries are keeping these animals safe, actually, because their foreign money is literally showing local people that rather than eating them for bushmeat or cutting down the rainforest to literally, you know, burn for fire, they're more valuable intact, they're more valuable alive. So for me, that's a really important message. And also, I've been really fortunate in working in the clean tech sector for a long time. So I've worked with amazing clients that are pushing renewable energy, for biofuel, for aircraft, for Climeworks was one of my clients that I've worked with. So they actually have these kind of units that literally suck carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So for me, whenever I fly, I know that I can literally offset every single carbon unit by with using someone like Climeworks, for example. Um,
Yeah.
so I think as long as you're being responsible and knowing that right now we don't have any options, right? At the moment, there's no other option. But of course, Virgin just had their first sustainable flight across the
Hmm.
Atlantic. So we are getting there. And I really hope that technology can take us to the next level now where we can travel by air sustainably. And of course, we are able to offset where possible at the moment.
Yeah. And I absolutely agree with you that the positives of what travel gives us probably, in my opinion as well, do outweigh, the negative consequences, unfortunately. But what do you think about, in terms of like living in London, how we can help the environment? Because one of my real pet peeves is how much plastic is still in my grocery packaging.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I actually left London in 2019. So I actually now live in Folkestone. So I live in the Kentish coast. Um, and I've been here, yeah, now since 2019. Um, of course, lots of my family and friends still live in London. I'm often in London for work. So absolutely, these urban areas where I think sometimes you're slightly more removed from the natural cycles of the planet, you know, the water cycle, all the cycles that we have on this planet. Sometimes you feel a bit like everything's sterile and everything's removed. But of course, regardless of where you live on the planet, we all rely on nature for everything that we have: the air, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food that we eat. But yes, I mean, single-use plastic is something that I've been incredibly passionate about preventing. Such a tricky. I think people a couple of years ago really got the idea that just plastic was bad, full stop. And of course, that isn't the case. Not all plastic is bad. We wouldn't be able to have some medical revolutions that we've had without plastic. And there's lots of ways that plastic actually sometimes is even better than the alternatives. But on the whole, it's the single-use plastic that is the real issue. And absolutely, I think that we have to keep up the momentum with pushing for it. We have to keep up the momentum with the supermarkets and the shops saying we don't want it, leaving it in store where we can, pushing for bioplastics where possible, where it's appropriate. Because we know now, we've got scientific studies showing that there is plastic now inside all of us, inside fetuses, inside most people, I think, eat the equivalent of a credit card worth of plastic. I think it's a credit card worth of plastic a week or a month, something crazy like that, in microplastic. So of course that's going to have an impact on our health. And I think we just have to keep pushing that, keep fighting that cause, and keep holding the brands that are using it and creating it accountable, and pushing for better options where possible, whether it be bioplastics, wherever, glass where it's appropriate, aluminium where it's appropriate. But yeah, it's a constant struggle. And actually now you see it in places like Madagascar, that you in your head feel like these kind of really exotic pristine environments, and actually the beaches are completely covered in plastic, and it's so upsetting to see. And luckily on island there are lots of people doing things like plastic cleanups, and but of course in our everyday lives these little changes that we can make really do make a difference. Like where you can always be carrying a water bottle with you, always carry a reusable coffee mug, bags, always make sure you've got a tote bag with you. And once you get used to it, once it becomes a kind of a permanent habit, every time you leave the house you've got those kind of tools with you, you quickly realize that actually that single-use plastic that you had been using completely unnecessary. And we can all do our bit. Absolutely,
definitely. I think things are getting better. I'm just, maybe what it is as things improve you become more aware of the negative things, like for instance in my grocery shop how much plastic there is, and you just think, why can't they make the same changes that other shops are making? Anyway, we could rant about this all day, I'm sure.
Yeah, but also the good thing is you can take, because what I think is always so powerful is that our wallet is our vote, right? So if you're not happy with it, don't spend money there, right? Go somewhere else that is making. So we can actually, every time we vote with our wallets, and you very quickly see that the corporates change their mindsets when they start to see that the bottom line's being affected, right? So every time I am making a kind of card payment, I'm thinking to myself, right, this is a vote. This is a vote that I support this brand. I support this shop. And if I don't like that brand or that shop and what they're doing to the planet, I can take my vote elsewhere.
Yeah, very good point. There you go. I'm going to go change my grocery provider tonight. So if we go back, you've talked about the beginning of your career. You've said it was a really exciting, well, it sounds like a really exciting career in wildlife filmmaking and all the other examples you gave us. And then in more recent years, you've had children. And in my introduction, I did mention that you did have some postnatal struggles. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, prior to kids, and it really does feel like people say BC, like not before Christ, but before children. It really does almost feel like a separate part of my life. It's such a kind of strong boundary. I was this adventurer, environmentalist. I was working on documentaries with Steve Backshall, swimming with monsters. I was underwater with great white sharks, it was almost like I was fearless, like nothing would stop me. I was studying marmoset monkeys on cliff tops, hanging off mountains, on, climbing ropes, putting myself into situations where other people sometimes wouldn't, but also that I felt really comfortable. I all I cared about, that I was making a difference, that I was exciting people and showing them great white sharks aren't these terrifying creatures. Actually, if you're under there and you're looking at their behaviour, they can be very safe to swim with. If you're doing it responsibly and doing it with the right people. But I didn't have much, fear, or I was not a risk taker, but I guess and I also, somewhere deep inside me, that I've only really recently tapped into the fact of this, is that I was really angry, actually, that you didn't see other women doing it. That, if you typed into Google adventurer, I think you had to go through kind of 4 pages of images before you'd see a single female. And yes, we've had, the Jane Goodalls of the world, but actually on TV, you don't see many women doing stuff like this. And I wanted to show that women could do it. I had lots and lots of obstacles in the way. People would often say, "Well, you don't, you wear makeup, you live in London, you're not an adventurer, you don't look like an adventurer." I mean, I don't know what an adventurer is supposed to look like. Probably what, people then have this perception of these kind of big butch army style men out there in the world, and actually showing that we can absolutely do this all too. And I've taken myself up to the Arctic, I've been up to the top of mountains, I've been to the bottom of the ocean, all to show the amazing species and creatures and places that we have on the planet. So before children, I had this unstoppable zest of life, I think, because I was living my purpose. I was so lucky. I discovered my purpose really early on, and so excited to be carrying on this journey and this career, and doing it for over 10 years, and then it got to, I was 32, and I had a kind of a yearning at this point, because I knew that if I didn't think about having children now, if that's what I wanted to do, now was sort of getting to the time that biological clock was ticking. So I had my first child, and I think at that point everything changed for me, and it was so many different things. I think number one was this feeling of real loneliness that people often don't talk about. I was always part of campaigns and projects, and I always had a team, and I was always out there with a group of scientists or a group of producers, and we were doing something meaningful. And then I was at home on my own with a baby. My partner was, working full time. My friends were either also working full time or then also parenting themselves. And I had this huge switch between constantly being outside, being an outdoorsy girl, living in the wild, traveling all the time, to really being trapped in the 4 walls of my house. It felt that way anyway, and very lonely, because I was then sort of quite isolated. Also, through my travels, I'd been to communities all around the world and seen that, on the whole, people live in 3-generation households, right? Most people in the world live in 3-generation households, and in really tight-knit villages and communities where, when you have a child, there's a really good support network around you. You probably have the older generation on hand to take some of the childcare responsibility, or also the wider community often was made up of your family members. And the way that we live in the UK is mainly in 2-generation households, mostly with both parents working, sometimes in single parent households, and it just doesn't have that same level of the support network around you. And I think that was one thing that I found really challenging. But also, because I had lived my purpose for so long, I wanted to continue working. I wanted to continue working because I wanted to bring money into the household and support my partner with that, but also because I had this passion and this drive to do something and to make a difference with my time. But then I just found that this constant sense of guilt that I wasn't progressing or doing as well as I used to be, wasn't, achieving what I used to be achieving. Also, that I wasn't this devoted earth mother that I thought, that I assumed I was going to be. I kind of had this dream in my head that when I had a baby, I was just going to strap it onto my back and carry on my adventures as normal. And of course, the reality is not like that. And I'd really set unrealistic expectations of what motherhood was like. It's just not like
Yeah.
that. So yeah, all of these challenges, and slowly I think that the change in lifestyle for me, so the being isolated, the feeling of loneliness, not being part of something, the constant level of guilt that I was failing in my career, failing as a mother, failing as a housewife, if you like, as well, because the house was a mess and the laundry wasn't done because I was always trying to jump between work meetings and jumping on a Zoom call whilst breastfeeding and keeping a tidy house, and just that sense of just the juggle. And it wasn't something I hadn't heard of. I definitely heard of the fact that the juggle is a struggle, but living and breathing it just led me to constant cyclical burnout cycles
Yeah.
where I was just going full steam ahead, not giving myself the time to rest and check in with myself. Once I had my second, I think it just exacerbated it even more, because I lost the ability then to, I always felt that I was quite a good problem solver, I guess, by being in the wild, by being in extreme and hostile environments, and being on productions as well, that of course stuff goes wrong in the field, and especially when you're working in foreign countries, there's always curveballs that come at you. And I've always been proud of the fact that I was a problem solver. But all of a sudden, I couldn't problem solve anymore. I'd lost the ability to prioritize. I'd lost the ability to problem solve, and I never got the space, or the time and space, to check in with myself and to assess my situation. And I literally felt like a robot, just jumping from
Yeah.
task to task to task, one thing, without actually what is important here. And the fact that actually my mental health was important, and I wouldn't almost let myself admit it, because I didn't want to fail. I didn't
Yeah.
want to fail as a mum. I didn't want to fail as, I'd overcome so many challenges in my life up to that point. I was like, how can I fail at this? This is
Yeah.
supposed to be the most natural thing in the world. I'm supposed to be, and I love my kids. And I always have to say this, because I think people again think that, oh, do you regret being a mum? Or do you, of course I love my kids so much. I love being a mum. And even when the really hardcore environmentalist used to say to me, you shouldn't be having children, right? Like, human population growth is one of the reasons why the earth is struggling. I had in my head that I wanted to bring up the next generation of nature lovers, right? I wanted to feed this passion into them, and hopefully have another generation that were stewards of our planet. So it wasn't that I regret being a mum at all. It was just the fact that all of these lifestyle changes had impacted me so heavily, and I was so embarrassed to talk about it. And even today, like I said, even the name of your podcast, I was like, oh, I don't, do I qualify? Is this important enough? But I've really now discovered that actually, the more I have talked about it, the more I understand that there are so many other women out there feeling the same way, and we all feel this shame or guilt and embarrassment. And a lot of the time, I think we think it's us, right? We think that it's just you that's the one that's struggling. And actually, we realize that what society is expecting of women, modern mums, is unrealistic. It's actually unacceptable. And until we all start talking about the fact that it is an impossible task to be a career woman, to have a nice, clean, perfectly managed household like you would in the traditional role of a mother, also, being at all the school plays, getting all the school admin done, being, home cooked meals, like all of these pressures. And I think social media really doesn't help with that, to be completely honest, because one of the things that I had was, when my children were napping, or if I did get any downtime, I would go online to check in with my friends, because actually by that point it was probably one of the only ways that I'd often get to check in with my friends and family, because face to face was often not possible, either because of logistics or because of other people were working and I was at home.
Yeah.
And I would be force fed these images and these videos of like other women looking like they're actually nailing it, right? These kind of
Yeah.
polished,
They're not.
pristine homes. Yeah. And all of that, again, I think it's just exacerbating this unrealistic expectation of what modern motherhood is like. And it's speaking out about it, I really believe is hugely important, and we need to speak out about it together, because actually only together then can we change some of these societal pressures, and
Yeah.
really realize that it's just not achievable. It's
Yeah.
unachievable.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. And there's so much to pick up on what you just said, really eloquently. In that, I remember also, I've got 3 children. And I remember as well, after my first child, you feel very lonely. And then I was also, a very passionate, ambitious person. And I wanted to go back to work. And the guilt when you do go back to work. And I've had to make significant changes in my career to be able to fit in with the kids. And it's funny when you said about the guilt as well, because, I still get it. Then now my oldest one is 11, and he said to me literally like last week, "Oh, I hate it when you do the podcast stuff because you're not around as much," So the
Yeah.
guilt is still there 11 years later. And I suspect it doesn't really get much better. But also, like we were saying off air before we started, no one talks about it.
Exactly. And we have
So
to.
I think,
We have to.
exactly, speaking out, it's so important.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you for speaking out. So first of all, how did you come through it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm kind of ashamed to say, really, that I let this go on for 5 years. 5 years of my life, which is a huge chunk of my life, from 32 to 37. I had a massive, I had changed. My identity had changed. My mental health had been impacted. Like I said, probably every 6 to 8 weeks. So I was doing so much from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. I was just go, go, go. I was always doing. I was never being. I never put myself first. I never did any kind of, it was always for someone else. And that kind of, the churn of life just meant that, like I said, I would suffer from burnouts where I literally couldn't get out of bed. My body would just say you have to stay in bed for 2 days to recover, and this was just going on and on and on. And anyway, I think it was Christmas 2022 where I realised something really had to change. Christmas time, everyone knows, is always just a little bit more, well, actually quite a lot more stressful than any other time of the year, where you're, having to decorate the house, and you have to go gift shopping, and you're trying to do exciting things for the kids to make it magical, and, taking them to Santa and hosting family and friends. Then you have your work Christmas parties and all these different pressures on actually a time of the year where, if you look at animals, and sometimes I think human beings, we forget we are animals. In the winter, animals hibernate, right? The activity levels of wildlife goes down in the winter, and yet we put this unrealistic expectation that our energy levels are supposed to peak and go up, and we have additional financial burden and all of these things around that time of year. And it's actually completely crazy that we're not following the natural cycles that we should be as animals. Like the dark days, we should be cozying up, we should be reading and spending time together, as a family indoors, and just activity levels should be down. Anyway, we don't. We kind of put this pressure on ourselves to keep going, keep going, keep going, right in the middle of winter. And I also that year had it come down with some type of winter virus, right, from the kids, probably from, they brought it back from school or nursery. And again, rather than just checking in with my body and realizing, I'm actually really ill, I need to just let myself recover. I need to, eat some really nutritious food and just put my self-care first, and get over this. I just carried on. And Christmas morning, I woke up, and I again just had this burnout episode, but this one was so bad it actually lasted a week. I did not get out of bed for 7 days, and I just missed out on all of the joy and the fun and the magic that I'd spent months, well, not months, but probably a good 6 weeks, trying to create for everyone else. Right, I'd spent so long creating this magic, and then I just ruined it for myself, and just by not checking in with myself, putting that unrealistic pressure on myself to have this perfect, wonderful Christmas for the children. And at that point, I really realized something had to change. I couldn't keep going on like this. I couldn't sustain this level, and that, something was going to really, really break if I didn't do something about it. So I was quite fortunate that one of the school mums, a friend of mine, Jo Ash, is a leadership coach. So she works with some of the biggest corporates in the UK, some really high functioning individuals within those organisations to help them with leadership coaching. Now, I've never really come across any coaching. I hadn't done any through any of the kind of corporate positions that I'd had in the past, but we'd sort of had like light conversations around the struggles of modern motherhood and the impact of mental health and the postpartum struggles that I'd been having. And I decided at that moment, that Christmas, that I had to do something, and I booked a course with her, booked a whole course with her. And she's going to be really embarrassed because she's such a humble, wonderful person, but she's going to be so embarrassed. But honestly, she helped me turn the corner. She was the key to the lock that I needed, and she helped me with all of these. And it seems so small, all these tiny, tiny things that she enabled me to do, and these boundaries that she helped me set that again feel really, really small when you say them out loud, but became huge and paid dividends when it came to my mental health. So one thing was boundaries around social media. Now, of course, I use my Instagram, I use my YouTube. They're ways and channels that I use to help excite people. Yeah, exactly, about the natural world, and I've always used them, so I know how important they are. However, as a mum, they'd started to become really toxic to me. And so I knew that I was still going to have social media for my work and for my, also to socialize with people. But by setting limits on what time of the day had made a huge difference to me. So now I have a mobile free zone in my bedroom. I used to have my phone was my alarm clock, right? Like many people. So you'd roll over in the morning, turn your alarm clock off, and instantly start looking at your notifications, your emails. And I knew at that point that if anything was slightly stressful or had kind of aggravated me or stressed me, it could honestly change my mood then for the entire day. So I bought myself one of those like old fashioned alarm clocks, and I don't have my phone now before 9 o'clock. I try not to have my phone after the kids are home from school as much as possible. And I had noticed then that just by those two boundaries, it's not saying I can't have it. It's not saying that I shouldn't use it. It's not saying that there's good in social media. But for me, those clear boundaries just meant that I, was able to use it more successfully and wasn't getting impacted. Also, for me, getting outside, right? It sounds so obvious. But Joe said to me, you need to be in nature. You need to go outside. And there's always an excuse, right? There's always, oh, but I've just got to put that wash on, or oh, I've got to prep the kids like dinner, or there's just that one last email that I need to send, or, there's always just that one last thing. But there's a quote actually that really resonates with me now. And it's, I think it goes something like, you should spend at least 20 minutes a day in nature, unless you're really busy, and then you should spend an hour in nature. It makes total sense because, now I either get up before the kids, and I've got then 45 minutes to an hour where I can go out, I can go for a walk, I can use my lunch break rather than trying to squeeze in a million things. I will go for a walk, even just go and go for a wild swim. I'm really lucky. I live in Folkestone, so we're by the seaside. I can go for a swim at lunchtime, or even if I haven't been able to do it during the day, because sometimes you have those days, just whacking on a head torch after the kids are in bed and just walking even at that time of night, even for 20 minutes, for me makes such a difference to look at the world around me, like get out of my head into the earth again, really ground myself.
You say it sounds so simple, that advice, but actually sometimes you just need someone to tell you to do it, don't you?
Joe said to me, it might seem like all of these things I'm saying to do is like one more thing to do in the day, but actually they're such small things and they don't take very long, but they will have such a huge impact on your mental health. And like you said, just having someone to sit down with me and give me the time and space and give me the opportunity to empathize with me, but also to help me problem solve and reflect on what was going wrong and what I could myself do to change it. And it was the very last session with Joe that I had where we started thinking about what are the two things that makes the biggest difference. And one was getting outside, getting into the wild, because by doing that, I felt calm, and I believe most people feel a similar way, right? Being outside, your nervous system is able to calm down. But also by just slowing down, we rush so much. This world is always in such a hurry these days, and we're always trying to rush, rush, rush to get everything done. And the slowing down, I'm still learning this, right? I'm definitely not a pro at the slowing down. Joe's the slow down pro, and I'm not quite there yet. But we just make better conscious choices, and um, we you actually realize that a lot of the things that you do or think that you need to do doesn't need to get done. It's not important in the scheme of things. Sometimes we put these kind of ridiculous extra tasks or activities just because we're trying to look a certain way in front of other people, and actually it's all crap. It doesn't mean anything. So yeah, slow down, wild up and slow down. Then these two phrases started coming out. So it was like, we need more wild, we need less rush. And it was like, oh, wild up, slow down. And at that point, I think something really clicked between Joe and I, and we got really excited, and we loved this notion of getting more people to wild up, more people to slow down, and to talk about this and to help take people on the journey with us. So we came up with this brand, and it's still quite new, so it's still quite exciting. We've just got our kind of logo and brand identity all created, so it still feels like really exciting sort of phase of a new journey. But we dreamed up this wild wellness hub, where all the tips that I had learned from Joe could be brought together, but also connecting women with other experts in different fields, whether that's breathwork experts, whether that was yoga experts, whether that was wild swimming experts, whichever ones, to connect them with different people that had these connections to either wilding up or slowing down, but also bringing people into nature and into the wild, because of course I've been really fortunate to have been to some of the UK's most beautiful and wildest places during my work. So whether it's the Knepp Estate in Sussex, or whether it's Allerdale Nature Reserve in Scotland, or Cabilla in Cornwall, where they've just brought beavers back. Like, there's all these beautiful pockets of wild that we still have in the UK. And this idea that actually, yes, mums can't go on a 3-month expedition to Honduras to find themselves, because we're not able to just forget all our commitments at home. But actually, it could be just one night, it could be 2 nights, it could be an hour. But all the opportunities to take women to wild up and slow down became really exciting to us. So we were going to be launching the website and the social media channels this year. But what we're doing, we're both working mums. And again, we don't want this to become another stress, another sort of, so we're living and breathing the brand. So we're taking it really slowly, even developing the logo and the brand we took really, really slowly. So I can't give you a kind of it'll be live by this date yet, because like I said, we're living and breathing the slow down part of it, and we want it to come together naturally without any stress, any additional pressure to each other, and to ourselves. But it just feels like a really important thing to offer other women the opportunity to find a place where they can help themselves, and that we can help each other. And then I think by doing that, we can come together to hopefully tackle some of these wider societal challenges that we have, like the inaccessible, unaffordable childcare challenge that we have, the kind of stigma around living in 3-generation households, this the patriarchal systems that mean that why should it be that the mums have to do the lion's share of the housework and the cooking and the school admin? Like, why is it us that has to do that? Why can't it be normalized that whoever you live with can take on some of that pressure as well? So hopefully this will become a really nice place where we can tackle some of these challenges together.
That's really exciting. And where are you at now in terms of refinding your identity and refinding your why? Do you feel like you've restabilized now?
I do. I think I have Well, I guess two things have happened. My children are just that little bit older now, where I'm able to now start taking them onto some wild journeys and adventures. And I found that really exciting. So, of course, some of the places that I would previously go, I was just either not safe or um, logistically would have been too difficult to bring like really, really young infants to those places. But of course, now I've got, 6.5-year-old son and a 3.5-year-old daughter. And that has been a real turning point for me because now I can get them really excited and take them to the places that I've been. And we've got some really exciting plans for travel next year where hopefully my son will get in the water with a shark for the first time, which is going to be an incredible
Oh,
experience. And I think naturally they are obviously excited and intrigued about this. So I think for me, that's been a big turning point. And I think that's not necessarily been anything that I've done, or maybe it is actually, maybe it's all related to my frame of mind. But that feels like a really exciting corner now that I'm finally able to bring them with me on these adventures. Um, and I've definitely made the shift in talking about it, talking to other women about it. I try now not to put all these unrealistic, because I found myself doing it too, right? If I put like filtered or unrealistic images of my life and my world on my social media channels, and now I try to be a lot more open. I still have crappy days, and I want to talk about those now because, like, again, otherwise you think that everyone has these like perfectly wonderful days because you only put that stuff up, right? But yeah, I think talking about it and being realistic on social media are the two of the things that I'm trying to consciously do now as well.
yeah. I mean, it is hard, but it looks like you're doing really well. A final question I like to ask people is if you could go back in time when things were at their toughest, so, when the kids were really little, what do you wish you could have told yourself as you were going through that time?
I think I would have liked to have told myself that you're not alone. You might feel alone, but you're not alone. Um, and that these feelings that you're feeling is not a fault of yourself. It's a hard time, right? Like when kids are little, it's really hard. It's relentless. Um, that you're not alone. That it's okay to talk about it. That you're not a failure. Um, that because you're not this kind of natural earth mother that you thought you were going to be, it's okay. You're still a really good mum. And that you will find yourself again. That this is just a phase. Um, it's a small part of your life, um, and of course now I look back and I dream of having a newborn again. Like but when you're in it, it's just it's a different world and a different experience. And the thought of sitting there with a newborn for an afternoon of just cuddling each other. My kids are so fidgety and wild now that they don't want to be sat and hugged all day. But yeah, I think that you're not alone. This is normal. It won't last forever. You'll find yourself again. And you can find yourself again. Like you have it in you. You haven't lost yourself. You're still in there. It's just a different phase of your life, and yeah, that you'll the old you or the yourself that will come through this phase, and you may even be stronger, and you may even be able to do things better and differently now because you've seen it from another perspective, right? And you've undergone these challenges, and you've been able to come through them, and then hopefully now help other people do the same.
Yeah. Thanks, Kat. Thank you so much for talking to us today. Thanks for your honesty, your vulnerability. Thank you for opening up, like you said, and talking about it, because I think, more women need to. So I look forward to seeing your new community, Wild Up, Slow Down, coming out into the world. And yeah, thanks very much for coming on When Life Gives You Lemons.
Thank you so much, Emma. Thank you for having us, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about these slightly challenging times that we all have, because by doing that, we can be stronger and learn from each other. So thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed that episode with Catherine Capon. I think it's such a good example of why it's so important to speak out so that we know we're not alone out there in our difficulties. Please come back next week for a new episode of When Life Gives You Lemons for more inspirational stories.